Allô? Allô, j'écoute. Mais parlez. Ah, que c'est agaçant. Mais répondez donc.
Jacques.
People do strange things for beauty.
It's the bloody beauty craze that's gone mainstream. But now New Mexico health officials are investigating 2 cases of HIV among clients who received so-called vampire facials.
In Victorian England, women would use arsenic to whiten their skin. In China, they would break and bind a girl's feet so they would appear smaller. Hungarian noblewoman Elizabeth Bathory was said to bathe in the blood of virgins to retain her youth, although there are some doubts about the actual veracity of those claims. To find that one surefire shortcut to beauty is to steal fire from the gods. Beauty is power. Beauty suggests health, wealth, and social standing. At the same time, beauty suggests something of the divine, something that transcends the mundane and the material. In Eyes Without a Face, beauty is something that's stalked and preyed upon. It's harvested by mad scientists in dingy laboratories. In Eyes Without a Face, beauty is something to be cut away, set aside, and stitched onto somebody else.
Maintenant tu as ton beau visage. Ton vrai visage. Tu vas pouvoir revivre.
Our story begins when the body of a young woman is dumped into a river. Her face has been mutilated, but matches the description of another young woman, Christiane, reported missing after a similar disfigurement. The girl's father, the respected Dr. Genesier, is called in to identify the body and claims that it's indeed his daughter. Christiane is declared dead. Her father holds a funeral for her. It's all a ruse, however, to cover up for the fact that Christiane is alive and secreted away in her father's mansion, and that the body fished from the river is instead one of what will end up being several attempts at transplanting someone else's face onto what's left of his daughter's. The first thing that stands out about Eyes Without a Face is the music. The film opens on this jaunty sort of carousel tune that recurs throughout and which lends a perverse carnival sideshow quality to the doctor's scheming. It's repetitive, it's French. This is then juxtaposed with the film's other main musical theme, a more somber, nostalgia-tinged piece belonging to Christiane, and which, paired with her waifish figure and pale, expressionless mask, reinforces this idea of her as something fragile, alien, and frozen in time. Christiane appears like a dancer in a music box, like a toy doll or a stone angel, like a bizarre sort of fairy tale princess. Fairy tales especially seem to be an influence. Christiane is like Rapunzel kept locked away in a high tower. She's like Sleeping Beauty waiting to be awakened from her lifeless slumber and returned to her fiancé. She's an amalgam of both Snow White and the Evil Queen, as she appears as both this pure porcelain thing attended to by white doves while also coveting and conspiring to take away the life and beauty of other young women. There's the implication of class, the predation of the lower by the upper classes as the wealthy doctor abducts and experiments on these impoverished college students. While Christiane is secreted away on the top floor of her father's manor, the doctor's unwitting organ donors are brought down into the basement with the dogs. Beyond class, you might infer a sort of psychological geography, a heaven and hell between Christiane's room and the dog kennel that's often blurred and might represent a sort of friction or traversal between beauty and ugliness, love and obsession, good and evil. After having her face removed, Edna, the second of the doctor's victims, escapes from her basement prison cell all the way up into Christiane's room, where she ultimately plunges out a window to her death. As the doctor looks out at the woman, there's the sound of the dogs howling down below, as if the hell he's created with his experiments is bleeding into the heaven he's tried restoring for Christiane. Christiane, meanwhile, makes frequent trips down below to visit the dogs until finally setting them all free and wandering out into the night. More than beauty, and in tandem with this kind of push and pull between beauty and ugliness, heaven and hell, Eyes Without a Face toys with the question of identity. Who do you see when you look in a mirror? Who are you when your face has been destroyed or been reduced to an emotionless mask? Who are you when you look in the mirror and see somebody else staring back at you? It's not just beauty, but normalcy and identity that's been lost and is being preyed upon. Dr. Genesier, in the tradition of all good mad scientists, is something of a bleeding heart, and there's a sort of blurring of the lines between how much of what he does is motivated by a love for his daughter and how much might be motivated by a love of progress. Like Dr. Frankenstein in his attempts to create life, we might infer in Dr. Genesier a certain resentment for the divine or nature made. Why shouldn't man be able to harness beauty or identity the same way that he does fire or electricity? There's also the notion of our mad scientist railing against the fates themselves, wrestling with his own guilt as it was he who caused the accident which disfigured Christiane in the first place. However, like Frankenstein, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like all good mad scientist stories really, Eyes Without a Face functions as a sort of cautionary tale against the overreach of progress, against the hubris of trying to harness forces, if not necessarily beyond our control, then beyond our ability to wield responsibly. Even when for a moment it seems like the doctor might have succeeded in giving Christiane a new face, she still doesn't seem altogether there. Her father cautions her against smiling too much, and it's as if she were still walled off behind her mask. As Christiane's new face starts to deteriorate, so too does her sense of identity, or rather it deteriorates even further than it already has. In contrast with the film's more whimsical fairy tale qualities, Eyes Without a Face is grounded in an impressive medical realism. The film is surprisingly graphic for a film from 1960, with both the face transplant scene and Christiane's deterioration depicted in gruesome clinical detail. At its core, this is still very much a horror movie, composed of deep shadows, mad scientists, ghostly apparitions, and a little bit of blood. In the end, I think the main takeaway of Eyes Without a Face is that there are no real shortcuts to beauty, identity, or humanity, and that trying to attain these things is almost self-defeating if the way you arrive there is ugly, distorted, and inhumane. In conclusion, Eyes Without a Face is a really good movie.